The wind of Delta Prime carried the smell of burned sand and melted stone. The sky had turned a strange color that day, painted by the smoke of hundreds of ships that had fallen from orbit. What was once a quiet desert world was now full of silence that spoke louder than any noise. In that silence walked Ryan, a human field medic with tired eyes and hands that still shook from the echoes of battle. Ryan's uniform was torn and dusty. His water supply was almost empty. He had not seen another living soul for hours. The command channel was quiet. No voices came through. Only static whispered in his ear. He could still hear the faint hum of energy from distant wreckage, but no movement, no sign of life. He walked carefully across the sand, his boots sinking with each slow step. Around him lay the remains of machines from both sides, human crafts and Veyron vessels, the enemy's ships. They had fought for control of this world, but no one had really won. The land looked the same as before, except now it carried the scars of their foolishness. Ryan bent down beside a broken drone, hoping to find a signal or some power source to recharge his beacon. As he worked, a faint sound caught his attention. It was not the crackle of fire or the hiss of cooling metal. It was softer, something almost human. A cry. He froze and listened again. The sound came from behind a collapsed transport, half buried in the sand. His first thought was that it could be a trap. Many soldiers had fallen for tricks before. But the sound came again, weak and full of fear. He could not ignore it. Ryan took a deep breath and climbed over the twisted metal. On the other side, he saw something small moving under the wreckage. The light from his visor reflected off two silver eyes staring at him. It was a child, a Vaharan child. The Vaharan were unlike humans in appearance, but not so different that one could not see emotion in their faces. This child's skin was pale blue, with faint lines that shimmered under the light. The eyes were wide and bright, filled with confusion. A thin layer of dust covered the small body, and one leg was trapped beneath a heavy plate of armor. Ryan's heart pounded. Every part of his training told him to stay away. The Vaharan were the enemy, and anyone who helped them could be punished. Yet when he looked at the child, all he saw was pain and fear. He knelt down and spoke softly, keeping his voice calm. "It's all right. I'll help you. Stay still." The child blinked, but did not move. Ryan tried to lift the armor plate, but it was too heavy. He looked around for something to use as leverage. A broken support beam lay nearby. He wedged it under the plate and pushed with all his strength. His arms trembled. His shoulder burned. The plate lifted just enough for him to pull the child free. As soon as the child was clear, the beam slipped and fell back with a loud thud. Dust filled the air. Ryan coughed, then looked at the child again. The small figure trembled, but was alive. The child tried to speak, but the words were in the Vaharan language. Ryan did not understand, yet the tone was clear, a mix of gratitude and pain. He smiled gently. "You're safe now. I won't hurt you." Ryan took out his medical kit. His supplies were low, but he had enough to clean the small wounds and wrap them. The child winced but stayed still. He noticed the way the child watched him closely, as if studying every movement to decide whether to trust him. After a while, the child whispered something again. Ryan guessed it was a name. He repeated it carefully. "Lynn." The child gave a weak nod. Ryan looked at the empty horizon. He had no signal and no transport. The human base was at least 50 kilometers away. He could not leave Lynn here. But if he brought the child with him, the soldiers might not welcome the idea. Still, he knew what he had to do. He lifted Lynn gently onto his back. The child was light, almost weightless. "Hold on," he said softly. "We'll find a safe place." The walk was slow and quiet. The desert stretched endlessly, broken only by wreckage and shadows. Ryan stopped whenever he saw movement, but most of it was only the wind playing tricks. Lynn's breathing was shallow, and Ryan could feel the faint warmth through the child's clothes. As the sun began to fall, Ryan found an old outpost half buried in the sand. The doors were broken, but the inside still had shelter from the cold. He set Lynn down carefully and checked the rooms for safety. When he returned, the child was sitting up, holding a small pendant that glowed faintly blue. Ryan pointed to it. Your family? Lynn hesitated, then nodded. The glow reflected in those silver eyes again. Ryan understood. The pendant was a link to home, a memory of those lost. He sat near the doorway, listening to the wind outside. For a long time, they stayed in silence. Then Lynn spoke, a few words broken by exhaustion. Ryan could not understand them all, but one word repeated several times. Mother. Ryan's chest tightened. He thought of his own mother, far away on Earth, waiting for a son who might never return. He looked at the small alien child in front of him and felt a quiet connection that had nothing to do with war or orders. He handed Lynn a ration pack. It's food. Eat slowly. The child sniffed it carefully before taking a small bite. Ryan smiled again, trying to make the moment less heavy. When night came, the temperature dropped quickly. The wind howled outside, carrying sand through the cracks in the walls. Ryan wrapped his jacket around Lynn to keep him warm. The child had fallen asleep beside him, a small pendant still glowing faintly in one hand. Ryan sat awake, staring at the stars through the broken ceiling. He thought about how strange it was that the same stars shone over both human and Varen worlds, yet both sides saw them as separate. The next morning, Ryan woke early and checked his equipment again. His beacon finally caught a weak signal human frequency. Relief filled him, but then he looked at Lynn and his heart grew heavy. What would happen when the rescue team saw the child? Would they understand, or would they see only an enemy? He crouched beside Lynn and spoke softly. We'll have help soon. Don't be afraid. Hours later, the sound of engines echoed across the desert. 2 human flyers landed near the outpost. Ryan stepped outside, signaling with his light. The soldiers approached, weapons ready, but lowered them when they saw his medical badge. The commander, a tall woman named Mira, frowned as she noticed the small figure behind Ryan. Who is that? Ryan answered calmly. A survivor. The child was trapped under debris. I couldn't leave them. Mira hesitated. You know what Command says about the enemy? We can't take that risk. Ryan looked at Lynn, who was hiding behind him. This is not a soldier. It's a child. You can see that. Let me bring them back safely. That's all I ask. The other soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. Mira finally sighed. All right, but this is your responsibility, Ryan. If Command questions this, you'll have to answer for it. Ryan nodded. I will. They boarded the flyer and lifted off the ground. Lynn sat quietly beside him, holding the pendant tightly. The flight was silent except for the hum of the engines. Outside the window, the desert faded into the distance, placed by the blue horizon of the atmosphere. When they reached the main base, Ryan was met with curious and uneasy stares. He guided Lynn through the halls, keeping his voice low and gentle. He brought the child to the infirmary, where he worked daily. He helped Lynn settle on a bed and checked the wounds again. The other medics watched, but said nothing. No one had ever seen a Varan child in a human camp before. Later that evening, when most of the others had left, Ryan sat beside Lynn. The child was awake, staring out the window at the stars. The pendant glowed again, reflecting light on the white walls. Ryan whispered, You'll see your mother again. I promise. Lynn turned toward him, eyes bright with trust. The war outside still continued, but in that quiet room, something small had already changed. One act of kindness had begun to bridge 2 worlds. Ryan did not know what the coming days would bring. He only knew that when he had found Lynn under the wreckage. Something inside him had also been freed, a part of his heart that had been buried under orders, fear and silence. For the first time since the war began, he felt hope. The base on Delta Prime was quiet after sunset. The long corridors hummed softly with the sound of machines that never rested. Ryan sat by the medical bay window, his tired face reflecting in the glass. Outside, a dust storm moved across the barren plains, hiding the stars behind a wall of gold and gray. Inside, everything felt still, except for the steady rhythm of the monitors beside a small bed. On that bed rested Lynn, the Varan child he had rescued. The child's breathing had grown steady, and the blue marks on the skin had faded to a gentle glow. Ryan checked the readings again and smiled with quiet relief. He had been given special permission to keep Lynn in his care. It was not an easy task. Many officers did not agree with the decision. Some whispered that it was dangerous to keep an alien, even a child, so close. But no one could deny that Lynn was calm and harmless. The child spoke little, yet watched everything with sharp curiosity. As if trying to understand the world through silent observation, Ryan had spent the last 2 days caring for Lynn. Teaching small things through gestures and patience, he showed how to use utensils, how to drink water slowly, how to rest without fear. Each time he helped, Lynn's silver eyes followed him, shining with a mix of wonder and caution. That morning, Ryan brought a small tablet into the room. He opened an old picture of Earth mountains, oceans, trees. Lynn tilted his head and touched the screen lightly, tracing the blue water with a finger. "That's my home," Ryan said softly. "It's far away, across many stars." Lynn looked up, said a single word in the Varan tongue, and then pointed toward the window. "Home," Ryan guessed. Lynn nodded. Ryan smiled. "Yes, home. You'll go back one day. I promise." For a moment, the child's expression softened. Then the silver eyes lowered again, as if remembering something painful. Ryan sighed. He had already sent a message to the command station about finding a lost Varan child. The reply had been short. "Await further orders." No other information had come since then. He wondered if the Varan even knew that Lynn was alive. As he prepared new bandages, a voice came from the door. "You spend too much time with that child, Ryan." He turned and saw Mira, the commander who had led the rescue team. Her tone was not harsh, only tired. "She's recovering," Ryan replied calmly. "She?" Mira raised an eyebrow. "You're already giving the child a name and a title. You know, Command won't like that. They want to move her to Central for study." Ryan frowned. "Study? She's not a subject. She's a child who was caught in the wrong place." Mira crossed her arms. "You're a good man, Ryan. Maybe too good. Just remember, compassion can be misunderstood in times like these." "I understand," he said, "but I won't let anyone treat her unfairly." Myra looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll delay the transfer until we hear from the upper council. That's all I can do." She turned to leave, then added quietly, "Be careful. Some people think kindness is weakness." When she was gone, Ryan sat back down and looked at Lynn again. The child was watching him with wide eyes, as if sensing his unease. "It's all right," he said gently. "No one will hurt you here." He gave a small smile. Lynn blinked once and smiled baka shy, an uncertain gesture that warmed the room. That night, as Ryan finished his reports, he noticed Lynn standing by the window. The child's small hands were pressed against the glass, eyes fixed on the sky. Outside, the storm had cleared, revealing a field of stars shining brightly against the darkness. Ryan walked over. "You like the stars?" Lynn nodded slowly. Then, to Ryan's surprise, the child raised a hand and drew a pattern on the fogged glass, 3 dots, forming a triangle, with a line connecting them. Ryan tilted his head. "Is that your home?" Lynn said something softly in the Varan language. Ryan did not understand, but the emotion in the tone was unmistakable. It was longing. He felt a quiet ache in his chest. "We'll find a way to send a message," he whispered. The next morning brought unexpected news. Mira entered with a communication pad and placed it on Ryan's desk. "Transmission from the outer colonies," she said. Ryan looked at the screen. The message was written in both human and Varan script. His translator quickly began to decode it. When it finished, his eyes widened. It was a diplomatic message from the Varan Council. They had received word from an unknown source that a human medic had saved one of their young. The message requested confirmation and the coordinates of the child's location. It was signed by someone named Araya. "Araya," Ryan repeated quietly. "Who is she?" Mira answered. "The Varan ambassador to the Unified Planets Council. She disappeared months ago when her ship was destroyed during a border incident." Ryan turned pale. "Then Lynn must be her child." Mira nodded. If that's true, this could change everything. The council wants proof before making contact. Ryan glanced at Lynn, who was sitting on the bed holding the glowing pendant close. He remembered how Lynn had said the word mother again and again. He finally understood. He knelt beside the child. Your mother's alive, he said softly. She's looking for you. Lynn's eyes widened. The small hands gripped a pendant tighter, and a faint shimmer of light surrounded it. It was reacting to something, perhaps to the signal from the message. Ryan stood and looked at Mira. We have to reply. We have to tell them their child is safe. Mira hesitated. You know what that means? The council might want to use this for negotiation. They could see it as a chance for advantage. I don't care about politics, Ryan said. This is about a mother and her child. She studied his face for a moment and then sighed. All right, I'll send the message myself. But whatever happens next, it's out of our hands. 2 days later, an official transmission arrived. The Varan had requested a meeting at a neutral space station between human and Varan representatives. Araya herself would attend. When Ryan heard the news, he felt both relief and worry. Relief that Lynn might soon be reunited with family, and worry about what might happen if the meeting turned political before departure. He sat with Lynn one last time in the infirmary. The child looked healthy now, color returning to the skin and strength to the small limbs. You'll see your mother soon, Ryan said with a smile. She's waiting for you. Lynn looked uncertain, then reached out and touched his hand lightly. It was a simple gesture, but it carried deep trust. Ryan nodded. Don't be afraid. I'll be with you. The next day, the transport ship lifted off from Delta Prime. Ryan and Lynn sat together near the window. Watching the desert fade into the blackness of space, stars appeared once more, endless and silent. During the journey, Ryan taught Lynn some human words. The child repeated them with care, voice soft but clear. Friend, Ryan said slowly. Lynn pointed to him. Friend, Ryan smiled. Yes, friend. The ship landed on the neutral station after several hours. It was a grand structure floating between 2 planetary systems, its silver hull shining in the light of twin suns. Representatives from both sides waited inside the main hall, but the atmosphere was tense. Soldiers stood guard at every door, though no weapons were drawn. Ryan led Lynn through the wide corridors. The child held his hand tightly, eyes darting around at the strange sights. When they reached the main chamber, a hush fell over the room. At the far end stood a tall figure dressed in flowing silver robes. Her eyes were the same as Lynn's, bright and full of light. When she saw the child, her expression broke into a mix of shock and joy. Lynn, she whispered. Ryan stepped aside. Lynn ran forward, small feet moving quickly across the polished floor. Araya bent down and opened her arms. The child threw herself into them, and for the first time, Ryan saw Vayon smile with pure happiness. The room grew silent, every onlooker moved by the scene. Even the guards seemed unsure whether to breathe. Araya looked up at Ryan, tears shining in her silver eyes. You saved my child, she said in careful human speech. You did what no soldier would do. Ryan bowed his head slightly. No one deserves to be left behind, not even in war. Rhea stood and walked closer. Your kindness has reached beyond our boundaries. I owe you a life debt, human. Ryan shook his head. You owe me nothing. Just promise me that this what happened how won't be used to start another conflict. Araya studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You have my word. Perhaps one day our people will see each other not as enemies, but as beings under the same stars. Lynn turned and smiled at Ryan, holding the glowing pendant between them. The light reflected off both their faces, warm and gentle, as the hall emptied. Ryan stood quietly, watching mother and child together. A sense of peace washed over him, deeper than any medal or honor could offer. He had crossed a line few dared to cross, and in doing so, he had discovered something far greater than victory understanding that night. As the ship prepared to return to human space, Ryan sat by the observation window once more. The stars shimmered, endless and quiet, and he thought of how one act of mercy could travel farther than any warship. He smiled faintly. Somewhere out there, a mother and child were reunited, and maybe, just maybe, the universe had begun to change. The space station floated quietly in orbit around a small, gray moon. Its silver hull reflected the distant sun, and the stars stretched endlessly behind it. Inside, the halls were clean and brightly lit, with a soft hum of machines that kept life moving smoothly. Ryan stepped carefully through the corridors, carrying Lynn's small hand in his. The child walked confidently beside him, eyes wide with curiosity at the strange new environment. "This place is very big," Lynn whispered, his voice soft but full of wonder. "Yes," Ryan said with a small smile. "But don't worry. We'll stay together. I won't let anything happen to you." The hall opened into a large chamber. Tall windows showed the blackness of space, and light bounced off polished floors. At the far end of the room stood Araya, Lynn's mother. She looked calm but strong, a quiet authority surrounding her. Her silver eyes searched the room, stopping finally on Ryan and Lynn. Lynn ran forward immediately. "Mother," he said, holding the glowing pendant tightly. Araya bent down, arms open, and Lynn leapt into her embrace. Her face softened as she held her child close, a mixture of relief and wonder filling her eyes. Ryan stepped back slightly, allowing them their reunion, feeling the warmth of their connection, as though it reached across both worlds. Araya finally straightened and looked toward Ryan. Her gaze was steady. "You saved my child. No words can express my gratitude." Ryan bowed his head slightly. "It was my choice. A child should never be left behind, no matter which side they belong to." Her eyes softened. "It seems humans are capable of compassion, even in times of war. I am beginning to understand your kind." Lynn, still holding the pendant, looked from Ryan to his mother. "He saved me," the child said. Araya smiled gently at Ryan. "Then you are not only a hero to my people, but also to my heart. Tell me, human, what do you wish for?" Ryan paused, thinking. The question was unexpected. "I only want peace. I want no more children to be lost, no more lives wasted because of misunderstanding. If we can do this for one child, maybe we can do it for many." Araya's gaze was thoughtful. "Then perhaps we can begin something that has been long overdue. Your courage has opened a door few could have imagined. I would like you to help me." Ryan felt a quiet tension in the room. To help her could mean entering the world of diplomacy he knew little about, but he could not refuse. "I will do what I can," he said. Araya nodded. "Then listen carefully. Our people have been fighting not only because of fear, but because no one has tried to understand. You have shown that understanding is possible. I want you to be part of a council that works to build trust between our species." The words sank in slowly. Ryan's mind raced. He had trained to heal and protect, not negotiate or lead peace talks. Yet here he was, being asked to step into a role that could affect entire civilizations. Lynn tugged at his sleeve. "You will come with me?" the child asked. Ryan knelt and looked at Lynn. "Yes, I will stay with you and your mother. But we must all work together carefully. This is bigger than any one of us." The next hours were filled with introductions and briefings. Humans from the station explained protocols, security measures, and rules for negotiation. Vaharan representatives added their own perspectives. Ryan listened quietly, taking careful notes. He realized that the complexity of interstellar diplomacy was greater than any battlefield he had ever faced. Araya led Lynn by the hand to a small room prepared for the child. Ryan followed, and Lynn turned to him with a small smile. "You will stay?" "Yes," Ryan replied. "I will not leave." The room was simple, with soft lights and comfortable furniture. Lynn explored carefully, placing the glowing pendant near a window so the light from nearby stars touched it. Ryan watched quietly, thinking about how fragile hope could be, yet how strong it grew when nurtured with care. After Lynn had settled, Araya asked Ryan to accompany her to a private chamber. The walk through the station was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. "Tell me everything that happened on Delta Prime," Araya requested. Ryan took a deep breath and recounted every detail. The silence of the battlefield. Finding Lynn trapped under debris. lifting the child to safety, the long walk to the outpost, and caring for the child in the infirmary. He described the trust he had built with Lynn and the quiet moments when the child first smiled. Araya listened intently, her expression unreadable at times. When he finished, she said softly, "I understand now why my child survived. It was your courage and your choice that made this possible. Humans are often seen only as warriors, but you have shown another path." Ryan felt a strange sense of pride and humility. He had never thought of himself as a hero. "I only did what anyone should do," he said. Araya's eyes met his. "Not everyone would have. You are rare human. Perhaps that is why we were able to meet here today." Ryan nodded. "Then what happens next?" Araya paused, considering her words. "Next, we begin communication between our peoples. We must show them that there is more to life than conflict. I want you to be the bridge. Your actions are proof that we can trust one another if only we choose to try." Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had never imagined himself as a diplomat, but he understood that the stakes were enormous. The lives of millions depended on small acts of understanding, and he had already begun that work without even realizing it. Over the following days, Ryan and Araya prepared for the official meeting with both human and Varen representatives. Lynn stayed nearby, often holding Ryan's hand as they practiced simple greetings and gestures. The child's laughter brought warmth to the sterile halls, reminding everyone that life could be gentle, even in times of tension. Finally, the day of the council meeting arrived. The main chamber was filled with representatives from both sides. Some humans watched Ryan with skepticism, unsure if his experience as a medic qualified him for diplomacy. Some Varen murmured quietly, their silver eyes narrowing as they observed him. Araya stood beside Ryan, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Remember," she said quietly, "we are here to build trust. Speak with honesty, and they will listen." Ryan nodded. He stepped forward when called and addressed the council. "We are not enemies by choice," he said, his voice steady. "We have fought because we did not understand one another. A child was caught in that struggle. I had the choice to leave or to help. I chose to help. That choice saved a life and opened the door to understanding." There was silence in the chamber. Every representative listened, some with curiosity, some with surprise. "I ask you," Ryan continued, "to remember that each person, each child, each life matters. If we can act with courage and compassion for one, we can act for many. I am not asking you to forget the past, but to consider that the future can be different if we try." A human officer whispered to a colleague, "He speaks like a leader." A Vadaran delegate tilted their head. "Perhaps he is not what we expected." Raya spoke next. "This is not a plea from one human, nor from one Varen. It is proof that hope can exist even in the shadow of conflict. Let us honor this hope by taking steps together, slowly but surely, to understand one another." For the first time in years, the council felt still. The tension eased slightly. Representatives exchanged quiet nods. It was a beginning. After the meeting, Araya and Ryan walked through the observation deck. Lynn ran ahead, chasing the reflections of stars on the floor. Ryan watched the child with a smile. The future felt uncertain, yet filled with possibility. "You have done more than you realize," Araya said softly. "What you did for Lynn was the seed of peace. Never doubt that small acts can change worlds." Ryan looked at the stars outside the window. "I only did what felt right," he said. "Sometimes," Araya replied, "what is right is what shapes history." As night fell over the station, Ryan sat beside Lynn once more. The child rested against his side, the pendant glowing softly. He thought about the long journey that had brought them here. From the sands of Delta Prime to this floating station among the stars, he did not know what challenges awaited them. But he knew that the bond he had formed with Lynn and the trust Araya had placed in him would guide him through whatever came next. In that quiet moment, under the endless expanse of space, Ryan understood something profound. Courage and compassion could cross any distance, bridge any divide, and perhaps, one day, unite entire worlds. And as he looked at the glowing pendant in Lynn's hands, Ryan realized that hope, once sparked, could never truly be extinguished. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation windows of the neutral station. Ryan stood alone for a moment, hands resting lightly on the railing, watching small lights flicker in the distance. He could feel the hum of the station beneath his feet and the quiet rhythm of life that moved through it. Yet even in that calm, his mind was full of questions. He had crossed a line few humans ever dared to cross. He had saved a child from the enemy, gained the trust of an alien mother, and now had a role to play that reached far beyond anything he had imagined. Every step he had taken had been a choice, and each choice had consequences. The door behind him opened softly. Araya stepped in, her silver robes brushing the floor. She moved with grace, yet there was an energy in her that suggested she carried the weight of her entire people on her shoulders. "You are thinking too much," she said gently, standing beside him. "You carry more on your mind than is fair for one human." Ryan smiled faintly. "I am thinking about what comes next. About peace. About my duty. About Lynn. About everything I promised when I saved your child." Araya's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You have done more than anyone could have expected. That is why you are here. Not because of orders, not because of law, but because of courage and heart. You have given our people hope." Ryan looked at her. "But hope is fragile. What if I fail? What if my choices bring more conflict instead of understanding?" Araya shook her head gently. "Then you will still have done what was right. That is all anyone can do." Just then, Lynn appeared at the doorway. The child's silver eyes sparkled with curiosity and innocence. "Ryan," Lynn said, holding the glowing pendant tightly. Ryan bent down and smiled. "Yes, Lynn, come here." The child ran into his arms. Ryan felt the warmth and trust in that small embrace. For a moment, the weight of duty and responsibility lifted. In that moment, he was not a soldier, not a diplomat, not a hero. He was simply someone who had chosen to protect and care for a child. Araya watched quietly, a small smile on her face. "You understand, do you not?" she asked softly. "Your bond with Lynn is part of what can change the future. Trust and care can cross any boundary, even between worlds at war." I nodded. "I understand. But the path forward is not simple. Humans and Varen have fought for centuries. How can one act of kindness truly make a difference?" Araya placed her hand on his shoulder. "One act is enough to begin. Every peace treaty, every understanding, every change in history starts with a single choice. You have made that choice. Now, it is time to take the next step." Over the next few days, Ryan spent his time preparing for the next series of council meetings. He worked closely with Araya, learning the intricacies of Varen culture and diplomacy. Lynn stayed nearby, exploring the station and learning simple words from both Ryan and Araya. One afternoon, Ryan sat with Lynn in a small observation lounge. Lynn held the glowing pendant, tracing the patterns with tiny fingers. "Do you understand what is happening?" Ryan asked gently. Lynn nodded. "We go to help people," the child said. "Make them see." Ryan smiled softly. "Yes, we will try to show them a better way. But it will take patience. It will take courage." The child looked up, silver eyes shining. "You have courage. You save me." Ryan felt a warmth in his chest. "Then we will try together. You and I and your mother." The following day, the council meeting began. Representatives from both humans and Varen filled the chamber. Tension was high, but Ryan noticed a quiet curiosity in many of the delegates. They had seen the story of Lynn's rescue, and it had begun to shift perspectives on both sides. Ryan stepped forward, standing beside Araya. He took a deep breath. "We are here not only to speak of conflict," he said clearly, "but to speak of understanding. A child was caught in the struggles between our people. I chose to help. That choice brought hope. Let it inspire our actions moving forward." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates exchanged cautious glances, while others remained silent, listening intently. Araya continued. "We must remember that each life has value. Each act of kindness, each moment of understanding can ripple outward. Let us not waste these moments on fear or anger. Let us build trust, brick by brick, choice by choice. Hours passed in discussion, negotiation, and careful listening. Ryan learned quickly, speaking when necessary, always honest and measured. He could feel the weight of every word, knowing that a single phrase could encourage understanding or deepen suspicion. During a break, Ryan found a quiet corner and watched Lynn playing with a small model of a spaceship. The child's laughter rang softly in the hall, a gentle reminder of what they were working to protect. "You are doing well," Raya said, appearing quietly beside him. Ryan nodded. "I hope it is enough. I hope they listen." "They will," she replied softly. "You speak from the heart. That is more powerful than any speech crafted for politics." Courage and honesty are understood across all species. As the days passed, Ryan and Araya's work slowly began to show results. Small agreements were made. Delegates from both sides began to communicate more openly. There were moments of tension, also moments of laughter and shared understanding. One evening, Ryan sat with Araya in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, and the moons of distant planets reflected softly in the windows. Lynn was asleep nearby, the glowing pendant casting a gentle light on the walls. "You have changed more than you know," Araya said quietly. "Your courage has inspired not only humans, but my people as well. The story of Lynn's rescue will be told for generations." Ryan shook his head softly. "I only did what was right. Anyone would have done the same," Araya smiled. "Few would. Most would have turned away. That is why your actions are extraordinary. That is why you are here now. You have a choice ahead of you, Ryan. A choice beyond duty." Ryan's heart tightened. He had already begun to understand what she meant. To return to human space would mean leaving Lynn and Araya behind, potentially halting the progress of understanding they had begun. To stay would mean stepping into a life he had never imagined, one intertwined with an alien people, far from the world he had known. "I don't know if I can," he said softly. Araya placed her hand gently over his. "You can, and you will know when it is right. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it." That night, Ryan lay awake in his small quarters. He thought about the journey that had brought him here from the sands of Delta Prime, through quiet deserts and wounded lands, to this station among the stars. He thought of Lynn, sleeping peacefully, and of Araya, who had shown him trust and understanding beyond anything he had known. He realized the truth slowly, like a star rising on the horizon. The choices he made now could shape the future of two civilizations, and in those choices, he could not remain neutral. He could not act only as a soldier or a medic. He had to act as someone willing to guide hope, to protect it, and to nurture it. The next morning, he found Lynn in the observation lounge, gazing at the stars. "Do you know what is happening?" Ryan asked gently. Lynn nodded. "We make people see. We make peace." Ryan knelt beside the child. "Yes, we try. And sometimes trying is harder than anything else." Lynn reached out and took his hand. "You do not give up. You're brave." Ryan smiled. "Then we try together. You, me, and your mother." Later that day, Ryan stood with Araya before the council. His decision was clear in his mind. He would stay. He would continue the work that had begun with a single act of mercy. He would face the challenges, the doubts, and the responsibilities. Because he understood that courage and compassion could travel farther than fear or anger ever could. Araya looked at him, her silver eyes full of trust. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Ryan nodded. "Yes, I am ready." Together, they addressed the council once more. Ryan spoke with clarity and honesty, explaining that his choice to save Lynn had not been an act of politics, but of humanity. Araya added her voice, reminding the delegates that even in the darkest times, understanding could shine through. As the session ended, a quiet feeling of hope settled over the chamber. Small agreements had been made, new bridges of communication had been built, the seeds of understanding had begun to grow. Ryan left the chamber and walked with Araya and Lynn through the observation deck. The child laughed softly, chasing reflections of the stars across the floor. Ryan felt a deep sense of peace. He had chosen the path beyond duty, and in doing so, had discovered a purpose far greater than himself. In that moment, as the stars shimmered endlessly outside the windows, Ryan understood fully that courage, kindness, and choice could change the course of worlds. And for the first time, he felt certain that the future, while uncertain, could be brighter than the past. The years after the peace treaty passed quietly compared to the storms that had once filled the skies. The war between humans and the Veyron was now only a memory kept in dusty archives and in the hearts of those who had survived. Among those hearts was Ryan's. He had once been a simple engineer who never imagined his name would be written in the history of two worlds. Ryan now worked as a human representative at the Veyron Council. He lived between two worlds, part of him still rooted in Earth's soil, part drawn toward the stars of the Veyron homeworld. Every day, he walked through the tall, crystal corridors of the Council City, where light shimmered on every wall and voices of different species echoed in calm discussion. Peace had changed everything. Trade flowed between planets. Students from Earth studied with Veyron scholars and shared missions explored distant systems. Yet for Ryan, peace was not just a treaty. It was a promise he had made on a battlefield long ago, when he carried a frightened alien child through fire. That child, now named Laro, had grown strong. The boy's silver skin shimmered faintly under the suns, and his eyes glowed with the soft blue light common among the Veyron. Whenever Ryan visited the Veyron city, Laro would run to him, his steps quick and eager. One afternoon, Ryan stood on the balcony of the council tower, watching ships glide through the violet sky. The air was cool and smelled faintly of the crystalline flowers that bloomed on the floating gardens. As he looked out, he heard footsteps approach. It was Mira, the Veyron commander who had once faced him as an enemy and later stood beside him as an ally. "You are far from home again," Mira said softly. Her voice carried the calm tone of one who had seen both war and peace and learned to value silence between words. Ryan smiled. "I guess I have more than one home now." Mira moved beside him, her gaze following the distant ships. "When the war ended, I thought peace would be easier than fighting. I was wrong. It takes more courage to keep peace than to win a war." Ryan nodded. "You are right. It's not about fighting now. It's about trust, and trust takes time." They stood quietly for a while. The twin suns dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The beauty of the moment made Ryan think how strange life could be. How a man who once crawled through the mud of a battlefield could now stand beside the leader of the Veyron. Speaking as friends, after a while, Laro ran toward them from the inner hall. "Ryan, look what I made," he said, holding up a small model of a human starship made of glass. "It can fly using light energy just like the Veyron ships." Ryan knelt to see it closely. "You did this all by yourself?" "Yes," Laro said proudly. "Mother helped me with the balance core, but I designed the wings." Ryan laughed gently. "Then you are already a builder. Someday you'll make ships that go farther than both our worlds." Mira looked at her son and smiled. "He is both our spirits, your bravery, and our patience." Her words touched Ryan more than he expected. He remembered the day he found Laro on the battlefield. The sound of explosions, the heat of the fire. The child's weak breathing, all of it had faded into memory. Yet that single act had shaped the fate of entire worlds. That night, a grand gathering was held in the council hall. Leaders from both species came to celebrate 10 years of peace. Lights hung like stars across the chamber, and music filled the air, a blend of human strings and Veyron, harmonic tones that created a sound both strange and beautiful. Ryan stood near the back, watching as diplomats exchanged words of friendship. Many of them nodded respectfully to him when they passed. He was no longer just a soldier or a medic. He was the living bridge that had made peace possible. Mira joined him again. "The council wishes to honor you," she said. "They have prepared something special." Ryan looked surprised. "Honor me? I did what anyone should have done." Mira shook her head. No, Ryan. Not everyone chooses compassion in the middle of war. You changed the course of both our peoples, the ceremony began. The council chair, an elder Varen, with silver markings across his brow, raised a hand for silence. 10 years ago, one human defied fear and hatred to save a child not of his kind. That act of mercy lit a path that led us here. Today we name Ryan as a guardian of harmony, a title that will live forever in our records. Applause filled the chamber. Ryan felt humbled. He bowed slightly, feeling the weight of so many eyes, but also their warmth. When the ceremony ended, Mira approached him again. "Among my people," she said quietly, "saving a life creates an eternal bond. It means your spirit will never be forgotten. You are part of our family now, and our world will always welcome you." Ryan looked at her with gentle respect. "Then I am honored, Mira. But the truth is, it was your courage that made peace possible. You risked everything to stand beside me." Myra's eyes glowed softly, a sign of emotion among her kind. Perhaps we both risked everything for something greater than ourselves. Later that night, Ryan walked alone to the edge of the Varen Gardens. The stars above were brighter than he had ever seen from Earth. He could see human ships and Varen vessels moving together through the dark. Like threads weaving a new story, Laro soon joined him. Sitting quietly beside him on the stone path, "Ryan," the boy said, "Mother told me you saved me when I was very small. Why did you do it?" Ryan thought for a moment before answering. "Because every life matters, Laro. Even when people call someone an enemy, it doesn't mean they are less alive. I saw a child who needed help, not an enemy. That's all." Laro looked at the stars. "I want to help others like you did." Ryan smiled softly. "Then promise me one thing. Wherever you go, whatever you become, remember that kindness is the strongest power in the universe." "I promise," Laro said. The next morning, the sky was filled with ships preparing for a joint exploration mission. Humans and Varon were traveling together beyond known space, searching for new worlds. Mira stood beside Ryan on the launch platform. "Will you come with us?" she asked. Ryan looked at the ships. "My heart says yes, but I think my place is here, helping others learn to live in peace. My journey is different now." Mira nodded slowly. "Then this is not farewell, only a pause between paths." She raised her hand, and Ryan took it gently. In that moment, there were no borders, no war, no difference of species, only to beings who had shared a bond born from courage and compassion. As the ships rose into the sky, Ryan watched until they became small points of light. Laro waved from the window of one vessel, his voice faint but filled with joy. Ryan stood there long after the ships vanished. The wind carried the soft hum of the departing engines, and the garden lights flickered around him. He felt peace, deep and quiet. Years later, stories about him were told across both civilizations. Children learned about the human who had once carried a Varen child through fire, and how that act had changed the stars. Statues were built in both worlds, showing a human and a Varahan standing side by side, hands joined, looking toward the horizon. Ryan never sought fame, but his legacy became something greater than any title. It was a reminder that one person's choice could shape the destiny of galaxies. When he grew older, he often visited the same balcony where he once spoke with Myra. He would look at the stars and smile, remembering her words, the promise of eternal bond. Even when she was far among the stars, he could feel her presence, like a quiet light within him. One evening, as the sun set and the horizon turned golden, Ryan closed his eyes and whispered softly. Peace was worth it. Far away, on a distant world, Mira looked up at the same stars. She felt a warmth in her heart and knew that somewhere across the galaxy, the human who had changed her life was thinking of her too, and so their bond continued not through war or distance, but through the quiet, endless thread of compassion that connected them forever. The legend of Ryan and Myra became part of the shared history of humans and Varon. Generations later, travelers would still tell the story of how one human risked his life for an enemy's child, and how that act opened a new chapter for all life among the stars in the silence between worlds. Their promise lived in an eternal light that never faded.